When the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission declared in December 2017 that the Lake Powell Pipeline project was ready for a final environmental analysis, they hadn't yet determined the scope of their role. A decision on September 20th declared them as the lead agency, but the cooperating agencies will work on decisions when it comes to permits.
So when they ruled last week, they essentially said, we're going to do the hydro plants, the pipeline components will be done by either the Bureau of Reclamation, the National Park Service, or BLM, and so each one will issue their own independent record of decision.
Thompson said the change means a delay in the 60-day public comment period, which initially started in December.
So that re-triggers another 60 days. Then the state and districts will have 45 days to comment to the response, and then they will go into the final drafting of a draft environmental impact statement.
Thompson said he expects a record of final decision by mid to early 2019. Prior to the FERC ruling, the governor's Executive Water Finance Board took public comment again on the Lake Powell Pipeline project. This time, alternatives were brought in.
Why don't we start looking at the future of the growth that's going to be occurring and mandate laws where the landscaping now has to be zero-scape in the front yard, and there has to be a limited amount of green grass in the backyard.
So I think there's a lot that could be done to improve groundwater recharge, both from the summer rainfall as well as the snow melt, which is decreasing.
You're still entirely reliant on the Virgin River, and I think that needs to be absolutely clear. You don't have any second source.
Giving incentive to secondary water users to conserve by installing water meters was another idea.
The pricing of the water is just counterproductive if you want to have conservation.
Others want a discussion on managing future growth.
In the works, I believe, it is planned to put in 2,300 new homes close to the airport. That is in an area that has absolutely no greenery.
I guess I think a discussion of the community of looking at what we'd like our community to look like and maybe slowing the rate of growth rather than just saying it's inevitable so that we've got to get the water from somewhere, so let's just let it happen.
But Thompson said those alternatives would be even more costly than the $17,000 per acre foot to build the pipeline.
You can only conserve water you in fact have in your system. And sometimes people overlook that. I think you can conserve infinitely, and that just doesn't work that way.
This idea that water conservation is going to cost more than a 140-mile pipeline across the desert, taking water 2,000 feet in elevation, I just find to be completely ludicrous.
There was also talk of quagga mussels from Lake Powell clogging up the system.
Consider the implications of the hidden costs. Again, this thing with the quagga mussels, it cannot be ignored.
Lake Powell will be built to deal with the quagga mussels at the intake so it does not become a problem throughout the system.
The Governor's Water Board looks at the financial impact on the state, and while they still haven't come up with how much it may cost, there is a gap.
There are federal programs that we could participate in that would cover some of that. Do we increase state taxes? Do we take money from education in the state budget? These are kind of some of the questions that are the hard questions as we think about how to finance a project like this.
Washington County's share would come from an increase in fees, water rates, and taxes.
In terms of proposals, they propose repaying 75%, with impact fees on new development, 15% with increases in water rates, and 10% with increases in property taxes.
And those who won't receive the Lake Powell Pipeline water in the county don't think they should have to pay for water they won't use. The overall construction cost has yet to be determined as well.
The current estimate is $1.5 billion. I think there's some question, is that an accurate estimate? At the state level, we've asked for independent validation of that once we get to that point in the process. So we're not that far along yet, but when we get to that point of the process where there's a more definite route, then we can get a more definite cost estimate.
The cost of the hydroelectric part of the project will be regulated and funded separately from the state.
All of it is on Washington County, and that cost is up around $700 million. So I think if we're going to talk about cost, We need to, and we're going to talk about the impact on this community. We need to talk about that project.
But Thompson believes funding that part of the project won't be a problem, as the energy can be sold back.
You expect fully these hydropower portions will all pay for themselves plus some. And just an example, we have 2 hydropower plants in the Quail Creek system. They produce about $1 million a year of revenue. They cost every year, and that's been going on for 35 years, they cost about $1 million to build. It's a pretty good investment of public funds. And you know, you get a wet year and they produce a lot more. You get a really dry year like this and a little less, but it's still a great use of public resource and been very beneficial to this district.
As agriculture shrinks, more secondary water is opening up. The county has been purchasing water rights to help subsidize the need for water in Hurricane and other locations.
What's the severity of the drought that Washington County should plan for? Should it plan for a drought like the 1930s?
With populations growing, the need for water will continue to be a topic of debate going into the future.
People are looking upstream. They are very worried. This is a very risky proposal. And if you look at what all the scientists are saying, Lake Mead's not fine, Lake Powell's not fine. They operate the two as one system.
In Washington County, Melissa Anderson, Community Education News.